The relationship between human well-being and the natural environment is shaped by a broad set of ecosystem services that operate silently in the background of daily life. These services include provisioning elements such as food, water, and raw materials, but they also extend far beyond tangible resources. Regulating functions, including carbon sequestration, air purification, flood control, and the stabilization of local climates, form a protective foundation that supports economic activities and social development. Cultural and recreational dimensions contribute to identity, education, and emotional well-being, while supporting services maintain biodiversity, soil formation, and nutrient cycling. Together, these layers form the ecological infrastructure that underpins modern societies. As land use pressures intensify, the erosion of natural capital becomes more evident. Urban expansion, industrial development, deforestation, and agricultural intensification disrupt ecological processes and reduce the capacity of ecosystems to provide essential services. When natural systems degrade, the consequences manifest in reduced water quality, increased vulnerability to climate extremes, loss of pollinators, declining soil fertility, and the disappearance of habitats that support diverse species. These impacts are often gradual, making them easy to overlook, yet their cumulative effect can be profound. Economic systems typically treat ecosystem services as free and limitless, leaving environmental costs unaccounted for and creating a gap between short-term decisions and long-term sustainability. Recognizing the value of ecosystem services encourages a more comprehensive understanding of development challenges. Environmental degradation does not occur in isolation. It interacts with social inequalities, economic dependencies, and governance structures. Communities with fewer resources are often more exposed to environmental risks and have fewer means to adapt. Conversely, investments in ecosystem restoration, sustainable land management, and conservation generate multiple benefits that extend across sectors. Healthy forests protect watersheds, resilient coastal ecosystems reduce storm impacts, and biodiverse landscapes support agricultural productivity. These contributions reveal that safeguarding natural capital is not merely an ecological priority, but a strategic pathway for enhancing societal resilience. Long-term well-being depends on the capacity to maintain ecological functions while meeting economic and social needs. This requires integrating environmental considerations into policy design, planning decisions, and resource management strategies. When ecosystems are viewed as foundational assets rather than expendable resources, development pathways shift toward more balanced and sustainable outcomes. Encouraging this shift involves scientific knowledge, economic reasoning, and societal awareness, working together to reinforce the central idea presented here. Ecosystems are not external to human life, but are deeply embedded in every aspect of well-being. Valuing ecosystem services presents challenges that stem from the complexity of natural systems and the limitations of traditional economic frameworks. Ecosystem functions operate across interconnected spatial and temporal scales, with many benefits emerging gradually or indirectly. Unlike conventional goods, these services rarely have explicit market prices, making it difficult to quantify their contributions to societal well-being through standard economic measures. This difficulty is compounded by the fact that ecosystems often deliver multiple benefits simultaneously, and changes in one function can generate cascading effects across others. Understanding this interdependence requires analytical tools capable of capturing nonlinear relationships, feedback loops, and uncertainties that characterize ecological dynamics. One of the central obstacles in valuation is the scarcity of data that reliably reflects ecosystem functioning over long periods. Ecological processes are influenced by climate variability, land use change, species interactions, and the cumulative impact of human activities. Collecting data that captures this complexity demands extensive monitoring, interdisciplinary research, and long-term scientific investment. Even when data are available, translating biophysical information into economic terms introduces additional challenges. Contingent valuation, hedonic pricing, and cost-based approaches attempt to approximate monetary values. Yet these methods depend heavily on assumptions about human preferences, market behavior, and ecological stability. As a result, valuation outcomes may vary widely depending on methodological choices, making interpretation and comparison difficult. The challenge becomes more pronounced when dealing with regulating and supporting services. The value of climate regulation, soil formation, pollination, or water purification often remains invisible until these services deteriorate. Once lost, the cost of replacing natural functions with artificial alternatives can be extremely high or, in some cases, impossible. This creates a paradox in which ecosystems are most valuable when intact, yet their contributions are recognized only when they begin to fail. Valuation studies attempt to address this issue by estimating avoided damages, replacement costs, or long-term benefits. However, these approaches struggle to fully reflect the irreplaceability and complexity of ecological systems. Another layer of difficulty arises from the diverse perspectives and priorities of stakeholders. Local communities may perceive ecosystem services through cultural or livelihood-related lenses, while policymakers focus on regulatory compliance and businesses consider operational risks or market opportunities. Reconciling these viewpoints requires participatory processes that integrate knowledge from multiple sources. Social values related to identity, heritage, or spiritual significance rarely fit into monetary assessments, yet they play a crucial role in shaping decisions about land use and conservation. As valuation frameworks attempt to incorporate these qualitative dimensions, the boundaries between economic analysis and social discourse become increasingly intertwined. The temporal dimension adds further complexity. Decisions made today can influence ecosystem conditions decades into the future, and the benefits of restoration or conservation may take years to materialize. Discounting future values, a common economic practice, tends to undervalue long-term ecological benefits, creating incentives for short-term exploitation rather than sustainable management. Debates about appropriate discount rates reflect broader ethical considerations. How much weight should be given to the well-being of future generations? This question lies at the heart of environmental valuation and highlights the limitations of relying solely on market-oriented tools to guide decisions that have far-reaching ecological consequences. Despite these challenges, valuation remains a crucial step toward integrating environmental considerations into policy and planning. Assigning approximate values to ecosystem services helps make environmental costs visible, supports cost-benefit analysis in infrastructure development, and informs mechanisms such as payments for ecosystem services or green taxation. Even when not perfectly precise, valuation exercises contribute to a broader understanding of how natural systems support economic activity and human welfare. Advances in digital technologies, ecological modeling, and data analytics continue to improve the accuracy and relevance of these assessments. As methodologies evolve, the goal is not to place a definitive price on nature, but to provide decision makers with clearer insights into the trade-offs and long-term consequences associated with environmental change. Policy instruments designed to protect ecosystems and promote sustainable development operate within a governance framework that must balance environmental objectives, economic priorities, and societal expectations. These instruments fall into complementary categories, each addressing different dimensions of decision-making and human behavior. Regulatory measures establish clear rules that define acceptable practices, providing a foundation for environmental protection. They include emissions limits, land use restrictions, conservation zoning, and mandatory environmental impact assessments. Such measures create predictable baselines, but require strong institutional capacity for monitoring, enforcement, and compliance. Without adequate oversight, even well-designed policies may lose effectiveness, highlighting the importance of coordinated institutions and transparent procedures. Alongside regulation, market-based tools introduce economic incentives to encourage environmentally responsible choices. Taxes on pollution, carbon pricing mechanisms, tradable permits, and payments for ecosystem services aim to internalize external costs that traditional markets ignore. When implemented effectively, these tools shift behavior by making environmentally harmful actions more expensive and rewarding practices that conserve natural capital. Market-based approaches offer flexibility, allowing actors to choose the most efficient strategies for meeting environmental goals. However, their success depends on accurate valuation, stable policy environments, and mechanisms that prevent unintended outcomes, such as shifting pollution to regions with weaker governance. Voluntary strategies add another dimension by engaging civil society, businesses, and consumers in collective efforts towards sustainability. Corporate responsibility programs, eco-labeling initiatives, and public awareness campaigns help align private behavior with broader environmental goals. These strategies rely on social norms, reputation, and consumer preferences rather than legal obligations. While voluntary measures can be powerful catalysts, especially when they encourage innovation or fill gaps in regulation, they are most effective when supported by broader policy frameworks. Without complementary regulatory or market structures, voluntary programs may struggle to achieve consistent or widespread impact. Governance challenges arise from the complexity of environmental issues, which often span administrative boundaries and involve multiple stakeholders. Effective governance requires coordination among government agencies, local communities, scientific institutions, and the private sector. Fragmented decision-making can lead to contradictory policies or inefficient resource allocation. Strengthening governance therefore involves improving institutional integration, ensuring that environmental considerations are embedded in planning, infrastructure development, and economic strategy. Mechanisms such as interagency councils, regional planning bodies, and participatory processes help align actions and promote shared responsibility. Another critical element is the use of environmental assessment and natural capital accounting. These tools provide information about the ecological consequences of proposed actions and help integrate environmental values into economic and financial decisions. When implemented systematically, they encourage long-term thinking by revealing the trade-offs between short-term gains and the preservation of ecosystem services. However, their effectiveness depends on data quality, methodological consistency, and political willingness to act on the findings. Strengthening these tools requires continuous investment in scientific research, monitoring systems, and data sharing platforms. Equity considerations also shape governance outcomes. Environmental policies can affect communities differently depending on economic conditions, access to resources, and cultural ties to the land. Successful governance frameworks consider these disparities and aim to distribute benefits and burdens fairly. Initiatives that include local participation, respect traditional knowledge, and support capacity building contribute to more inclusive and durable outcomes. When communities are engaged as partners rather than passive recipients of decisions, environmental policies tend to be more legitimate and effective. Ultimately, governance systems function best when they recognize the interconnectedness of ecological, social, and economic dimensions. Regulatory measures, market-based tools, and voluntary strategies each address different aspects of environmental management, but none can succeed in isolation. A coherent policy mix, supported by strong institutions, informed decision-making, and active stakeholder participation, creates the conditions for sustainable development. Future perspectives on sustainability increasingly highlight the need for integrated approaches that consider environmental, economic, and social dimensions as interdependent components of a single system. Environmental challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, soil degradation, and water scarcity transcend national borders, making international cooperation essential. Coordinated agreements create shared frameworks that allow countries to align efforts, exchange information, and build collective capacity to manage ecological risks. Global initiatives related to climate adaptation, habitat conservation, pollution reduction, and sustainable resource use are most effective when supported by harmonized monitoring systems and transparent reporting mechanisms. These collaborative structures help promote continuity, trust, and accountability across regions facing diverse environmental realities. As environmental pressures intensify, innovation becomes a decisive factor in shaping long-term sustainability pathways. Advances in digital technologies, ecological modeling, and geospatial analytics enhance the ability to monitor ecosystems, forecast environmental trends, and evaluate the impacts of different management strategies. Smart sensors, satellite systems, and artificial intelligence applications generate data that can inform restoration projects, optimize resource allocation, and support more adaptive governance. At the same time, nature-based solutions provide valuable tools for restoring ecological functions while delivering social and economic benefits. Wetland rehabilitation, reforestation, green infrastructure, and coastal ecosystem restoration demonstrate how ecological processes can be harnessed to address contemporary challenges, such as flooding, heat stress, and declining air quality. Adaptation is another cornerstone of future sustainability efforts. As climate variability and extreme events become more frequent, societies must strengthen resilience across sectors. Urban areas face growing pressure to manage heat waves, water scarcity, and storm impacts, making integrated planning essential. Urban green spaces, permeable surfaces, and sustainable mobility systems help buffer climate risks while improving quality of life. Rural regions require strategies that maintain soil health, protect water resources, and support diversified agricultural systems capable of withstanding shifting climatic conditions. Adaptation planning also involves strengthening infrastructure, updating building standards, and enhancing emergency response mechanisms to reduce vulnerability and economic loss. Institutional evolution plays a central role in supporting these adaptive and innovative practices. Effective governance requires clear property rights, well-defined responsibilities, and coordinated action among national, regional, and local institutions. Policies that integrate natural capital into economic analysis encourage decision makers to recognize the long-term benefits of conservation and ecosystem restoration. Inclusive governance is particularly important, ensuring that communities, private actors, and scientific organizations contribute their expertise and perspectives. The transition to a circular economy further supports sustainability integration by shifting attention from linear patterns of production and consumption towards systems that emphasize reuse, recycling, and resource efficiency. Circular strategies reduce pressure on natural ecosystems, extend product life cycles, and create opportunities for green innovation. When combined with renewable energy sources and sustainable mobility solutions, the circular economy contributes to a more resilient economic structure capable of supporting prosperity within ecological limits. Economic diversification based on low-impact technologies in sustainable supply chains strengthens competitiveness while reducing vulnerability to resource scarcity and environmental disruption. Education and awareness also influence the direction of future sustainability efforts. Societies that prioritize environmental literacy cultivate informed citizens capable of engaging with complex ecological issues. Educational programs that integrate environmental science, digital tools, and community participation broaden understanding of how individual choices relate to global challenges. Long-term cultural shifts emerge as new generations adopt values and behaviors that align with sustainability goals. The most promising pathways are those that integrate technological innovation, ecological knowledge, economic strategy, and inclusive governance. By strengthening cooperation, investing in innovation, and promoting equitable resource management, societies can navigate environmental challenges while creating opportunities for sustainable development across future generations.